New trailing arms, new shocks on an old rusty truck. This is where I work. This is how I do. This is how I gets her done. It's a little bit warmer today. Sun's shining. Well, got some mail, some chassis parts, a box full of boxes. So there's 4 pieces in here. These are the upper and lower rear trailing arms for the TrailBlazer Envoy. That's going to be one of the upper arms. Frig. The knife's dirty, but she's sharp. It's got a serial number onto it. Feels like it's laser etched. That's pretty decent. Well, I took the cover, peeled the front back, and I peeled the back off this thing today. I'm gonna open the door and see if there's any life in the battery, in the interior light. And the car cover is actually frozen down in places. Somewhere here, these straps are actually frozen down. Well, the amperage is coming up a little bit, so maybe the battery was getting low, I don't know. Seems to be doing something there now anyway. Putting some juice into her there now, a couple amps. I've got the vehicle jacked up. I've got jack stands under the frame, and I'm not going to support the rear end at all. I'm just going to let it hang from the shocks, and I'm just going to take, there's only one bolt on this end and one bolt on that end, and that's it. So instead of disconnecting everything, I'm just going to take one of these out and just change them one at a time. So if I just take one out, then everything should stay in place. This is a 4-link setup, so the other side's still hooked up, and the panhard bar is still hooked up. Everything's still hooked up. So if I just take one out, I should be able to wiggle it a little bit back into place, and I won't have to line anything up, or I won't need any help. Well, I took out the front bolt and the rear bolt, so that's how easy. One bolt here, one bolt here. I actually had to take out a small keeper bolt for this e-brake cable just to make a little room, and I notched out this plastic to make a little bit of room. You can take out the whole inner fender, but I just put a little notch here. And I noticed in the body, in behind, there's a little notch in the body there too, so I had to avoid that. But I got this bolt out, this bolt out. This should just wiggle out of there. Alright, it was kind of giving me a hard time, so I turned the camera off and I thought maybe I would struggle with it for a minute, but as soon as I turned the camera off, it pretty much popped right out. There's a couple of keeper clips that are clipped onto the frame there, and they kind of get in the way a little bit. But I didn't want to disturb them because they hold the nuts that the bolts go into. Just like that. So this will be a lot better, hopefully. There's a lot of salt and sand and junk up in this pocket here that the trailing arm goes into. So I'm just going to scrape some of it out. Maybe blow it out with some compressed air, perhaps. And better yet, spray some rust proofing. In there. Now, this goes like this. It kicks out a little bit, so it has to go a certain way because it would be the opposite. So this end has to go in the front. She's a little bit of a tight fit. We'll probably put this front bolt in first. Then I'll put this other one in. It goes in from behind. Everything's lined it up pretty good. Like nothing is really moved or anything because I'm only disconnected one link. That is not a hammer. This back one here has a nut. Everything here is a 21 millimeter. This nut is a 21 mil or 13/16, and same as the head of the bolt, same as this one here. And I think the ones down below, I think they're going to be the same size as well. Well, now that the upper one's in and the bolts are snugged up, I'm going to double check them or torque them down later. That's in there. The bolts are lined up in place. This is the lower arm. The lower arm is right here, and I've got the socket on it right now. It's going to be the same thing, just one bolt in the front and one bolt in the rear. And I think they're the same left and right. Well, I just pulled out the back bolt for the lower arm, and the thing just dropped on the ground. And I guess I'll put the new one in. Should be pretty easy. There's the old one. Looks pretty straight. There's the new one. Looks pretty straight. Looks like the same thing to me. I don't see any drain holes or anything. So I'll put the serial number pointing down, I guess. I'll stick it up into place. pick the bolt there. Then the bolt will hold the back. And the front bolt is right here. Oh, no, that don't work. Fail. Okay, I guess you gotta put the front in first. It's into a little bit of a pocket there. I'll probably spray some rust proofing up in that pocket also. Alright, now I should be able to get her together. That's not a hammer, but it works. Well, there's the new trailing arms, upper and lower, and new shocks from previously. Those are Silverado shocks, and they droop. They're like 1 inch longer than the TrailBlazer shocks, and they droop just enough that the anti-sway bar link doesn't hit it doesn't touch the trailing arm. So I just got to put this bolt back in here. That's under full droop right now. The shocks are hanging all the way down. Most of the time I do things by hand. This just helps me get through things a little bit faster today. There. That should be better. I was considering deleting the rear anti-sway bar altogether, and the links and the bar. It's actually an option. Like a lot of cars don't even have that. Like the '83 FireBird project, it doesn't even have one. But it was an option for the Trans Ams. So I think this is an optional part, the rear anti-sway bar. And for a lot of people, disconnect them for off-road or remove them. So I don't know. I decided to keep it for now. And I've got new sway bar links for the front that I still haven't put in yet. Now I gotta go and do the other side. There's the old ones. They're getting kind of crusty. So, out with the old and in with the new. These are the Michelin LTX AT2s that I put on recently in a recent video, and got them dirt cheap. Over here on the driver's side, this is actually the shady side, so I didn't show it, but I did the same thing. Well, there we go. What I did was I moved the jack. I had the jack on the trailer hitch, and I was lifting the ass end up with the heavy duty tow package on the rear frame. This vehicle has a frame. So what I did was I moved the jack here, and I jacked on the anti-sway bar, and that is actually in the front of the diff. And that, when I jacked it up there, it twisted the diff a little bit, just straightened out the bolts basically, because the bolts were a little bit out of line. They were pulling backwards. I figured because the shocks are hanging off the back and the panhard bar hanging off the back, so the front was a little bit out of whack. So jacking it up allows me to get the bolts in. I got all 4 bolts in there now, and that lined everything up. And now I'm preloading the suspension, so I've got all the weight on the rear end, and there's no weight on the jack stand there at all. So I've got the whole ass end lifted up, the weight on the springs. It's all preloaded. So that's like the ride height there, preloaded. So you're supposed to torque down these bushings when they're preloaded because they're rubber and they twist, and so it's all preloaded. I tightened up all the bolts, I got them all in both sides. this is the driver's side here now, and I'm all done. So I think I got the torque wrench right here from last time in the back of the truck. So I'll just put the torque wrench on there and just double check them. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to double check them after 100 kilometers or something like that. And I probably haven't gone that far, but I'm going to double check them anyway, just because I've already got the wheel off and it's right there. And then I'll go ahead and put the wheels back on her, and that's it. So I'm pretty much done the trailing arms, done what I'm here to do, and I'll have the wheels back on in a minute. New trailing arms, new shocks on an old rusty truck. And this is my garage. This is where I work. This is how I do. This is how I gets her done. It's probably not ideal, but I do get her done. And I don't let that stop me. That white stuff. This thing should be like gold plated and shiny and have a big aura around it, glowing. Oh. It's not very often I use this. This is the torque wrench. It's not very often I use it, but sometimes you really should, like torquing down the head bolts on an engine, or wheel nuts on a truck. Sometimes I just stick a screwdriver in the brake rotor to hold it from turning, because this vehicle has a differential in the rear. So that works. Otherwise it would just spin around in circles, because the other wheel is up off the ground and it's a differential. All the suspension is preloaded, all the bolts are tight. Double check the wheel adapters, and they're good at 110 foot-pounds. So I guess I'll put the wheel back on. I got the keeper for the e-brake cable, everything good to go there. I was planning on tinkering with this thing today because I had good weather, but I had to run some errands, and then it took me longer than expected to do the trailing arms. So maybe next warm day, or next time I get some free time, see if this thing will fire up. Everything good to go. Looking a lot better than the old rusty ones, that's for sure. Thanks for watching.